translated and transcribed?
Not doing transcriptions because often I can't do the interviews with a recorder. People are just apprehensive still, rightfully so. So when I can, I'm just taking detailed notes and then comparing particular keywords that people express when we talk about very particular subjects. And it's usually, and it is still in the definition of heritage. So I guess that can start. What was the working definition that Turquoise Mountain uses when understanding heritage and the conservation of that heritage? Sorry.
Just a small soundbite there. I mean, I guess I would say we didn't necessarily have a set. I mean, we work across different types of heritage, obviously tangible, intangible, from our working crafts through to obviously our stuff in buildings. And obviously the community side of things as well, on the intangible side. So all of that kind of fits together. So I guess we don't necessarily have a particularly rigorous definition of what we define as heritage, albeit, I mean, we've just written a conservation management plan for the Taurus Burma building, and that does have a very defined, rigorous argument over the different.
So when you're
assessing it against the different types of heritage and its different levels of significance, so yes, when we need to, we do obviously have the ability to kind of go down a more rigorous. Kind of
is there a general framework when you're looking for potential buildings to preserve? Are there key features that need to be included in the property in order to fit the standard?
No, I don't think it's as rigorous as that. We're a bit more opportunistic than that potentially, but also, I mean, I think it has to have architectural merit, and it has to be able to, especially in somewhere like Yangon, where obviously you've got so many buildings that are in need of renovation or in need of new use. So obviously, you've got to have some kind of justification for it. So it has to have architectural merit. It has to have location is normally quite important as well.
Location being in a densely populated area?
I think in a prominent location, say you're doing a sort of an exemplar project, then it being in a prominent location enough that people see it who aren't necessarily looking for it. So tucked away in a back street, it'd be great if we could point people at it, but the number of people who are going to go past it, interact with it, think about why it looks different than the other buildings, or why it's more enjoyable or not more enjoyable, or whatever. It seems like it's just having that debate. Is obviously having a building in a more prominent location
is the concept of having an exemplar project one of the main driving factors that leads you to do the project in the first place?
I think for us at the moment, certainly it is, because it's there aren't that many people doing these projects. So by its very nature, anything you do is a kind of an exemplar project in some ways. So from that side, and I think we're a small organisation, so we would love to do up 100 buildings next year, but it's not going to happen. So what we do, we're hoping will either inspire and enable others to do, to sort of pick up and do it really. And also, it's around a naff phrase, but the sort of the capacity building of the local construction industry to be able to deal with these buildings and that whole livelihood side of things is really important as well, and that also links in with the craft side of things. So but I think in all our projects there's always a social agenda. It tends to be a community agenda as well. Obviously we're a charity. I mean, there are some charities whose remit is just pure heritage, and that's not us. We're much more interested in the kind of the positive impacts on the economy and also livelihoods. The pride, I mean, certainly in Afghanistan, and it's relevant certainly here as well, in terms of the pride people in their kind of own culture. Albeit with the building, sometimes that's a bit more complicated because it's colonial architecture, although all those buildings have a much longer Burmese or Myanmar history than they do a colonial history. So they've all got a very rich kind of...
Have you noticed a positive response to the projects from both the people that are living directly in the unit and those people that are now interacting with the unit?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly, around the time of the project and immediately after the project, I can't remember when I last met that, probably a couple of weeks ago. and still sort of chat to people, and they seem very positive about it. I think one of my disappointments is that there are still what was originally the bookstore, which, to be fair, when we took on the project, was empty. Is still empty.
Yeah.
And who are known as the Mahinga sisters, who used to have a Mahinga shop in there. Again, that's empty. So that's a bit disappointing. I mean, they're still living above it, so but not sort of fully utilising that space. And when I speak to my site engineer and try and find out why, I mean, I don't know whether they're sort of holding out for the kind of the golden ticket rental or selling it or what, but I don't know. But it's still...
They've said they're looking to rent it out.
Yeah, but they could have rented it out to somebody for the last over a year now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, a few families there are now looking. It doesn't seem like anyone wants to sell it, but it doesn't look like they want to start renting it out. Is that something that has to be factored into the projects, that the increased value of the property can potentially lead to the financial encouragement of the community within the building to start leaving, and how can you manage for that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're obviously always aware of that, and I don't think we necessarily felt that was a reason not to do the project, I guess. I mean, there's a big diverse community in that building, and there's some people who aren't going to ever go anywhere, no matter what. And there's obviously a huge mix of different socio-economics level. Some very poor people, some relatively sort of middle class, and we knew that when we started, I guess. And I think it was just, we felt that it was quite a representative cross section in one building of Yangon, and also it had extra factors like the fact that Ludo Sengwin lived there, and it had quite a rich kind of living history. Also made it quite an engaging.
So how was that particular project selected? What was the did they come to you, or did you go to them?
So that was at a time we were coming out then to partner with the Yangon Heritage Trust to help them deliver a tangible physical project. That was kind of, so when we came out to Myanmar, we'd done a little bit of scoping. That had been one building that had been brought to our attention by YHT, and we looked at a few others. And I think so. The building was under threat of demolition from a returning land owner. Yeah. One of the descendants of the original building owners of kind of Indian descent who'd left in the 60s, and what people say is that originally they left it in some kind of trust to pay for the upkeep of a local mosque, sort of a waqaf structure. Although when we looked into that, there was no kind of proof of that. But and either way, everyone said that those payments hadn't happened for certainly within their memory. That
they don't remember paying for a long time.
No, they don't remember that the payments of the rent actually then went on to pay for the upkeep of the mosque. So I think those payments were probably fizzled out quite a long time ago, because whoever set them up had no control and what sent the country, basically.
So were the tenants regularly paying rent the entire time?
They weren't, and then like 4 or 5 years ago, this guy came back and started trying to get pretty token amounts of rent, really, rather than for the money, I suspect, to try and legitimise his claim on the building. Okay.
And he was a returnee from India?
Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point, he sort of, this Sahama thing, offered to build a new building, 10-story, give them all a new apartment, obviously split the profits of the additional space with a low level.
Did the tenant seem receptive to that offer?
I think it was, on the whole, no, basically. I think there were a couple who thought, oh yeah, why not? But then I how it was explained to us is that actually there's been that had happened to quite a few of the buildings, actually mostly on the other side of the street. They've got those pretty poor quality, and I think they'd have seen that it wasn't necessarily a great thing, like the lift wasn't working after the first year or whatever, and you end up with like an old lady on the top floor who has to spend half a day trying to get up and down the stairs, or just is basically confined to her flat because she can't get out. So I think they'd seen firsthand that perhaps this wasn't the best solution, and being in a low-level 2-story building, and also having, they had all effectively had their own entrance, so kind of although it's a community, there's very little shared space, which I think is probably quite a nice dynamic for the building, and probably why community stays relatively.
Everyone takes care of their own property, and the place automatically becomes better quality rather than having to negotiate to
exactly.
fix something.
And no one's blaming anyone else. And there was a Ethan A, who was a slightly wealthier guy who had the opposite apartment to the one that you went to speak to on the opposite side.
Yeah.
And that got hit by a tree in August, and they sort of never returned. But his wife had actually grown up in that apartment, and actually they had an open apartment with Nudis and Wynn's family next door, so they kind of grew up as kind of family, even though they weren't related. So she had quite a strong emotional attachment to the building, and he was clearly quite a driving force in kind of trying to rally people together, because he was an older guy, slightly wealthier, so he sort of had a standing in the community, which meant that he could sort of convene people. So
it was his family, or he was the leader in the drive to renovate the building?
Yeah, he was one. There were two guys, him and actually the guy who runs the motel, the Love Motel, as it was called by our...
It's still called the Love Motel. I've asked who else I could speak with, and every tenant says, just don't talk to the Love Motel.
But he was one, when we started, was one of the spokesmen for the community, and the building had sort of naturally divided on a sort of east-west axis. I mean, I don't know. There are all sorts of clear politics within the thing, but anyway, they all approached YHT and said the building was under threat of demolition. Is there anything they can do to help? But I think this was in the sort of, I guess YHT were probably less than 2 years old at this point.
Okay.
And I think because of the history of Lillis and Wynn, because of the location next to the Armenian church and a prominent location on Merchant Street opposite Gandhi Hall, all these kind of things, and that it was quite a typical downtown building, they were quite keen to do something. And originally looked at options of just sort of fixing up the roof or whatever, and then I think at the time we came out, we were like, well, we want to do a physical project, why don't we just get started on this project?
Okay. So how involved were you all in the legal proceedings that helped guarantee the land tenure for the residents?
There was very little of that. So basically, the biggest proceedings that we were involved with is trying to get permission from YCDC to get the major renovation permit, basically.
Okay.
The way that worked, so YCDC, because of any kind of, as soon as there was any kind of legal ambiguity, they sort of back off and nothing happens, basically. So
okay. So could there be something that happened?
We had to push to get the permit, basically. And so I think granting the permit for those works, despite an objection from the claimant, obviously, and YCDC overriding that, is quite a strong kind of bit of case law, if you can call it as that. So I think that gave everyone quite a lot of confidence that no one's going to... given that the main issues probably would be around YCDC, and given that they had already decided that they're happy to go against the wishes of this landlord because they didn't deem his claim to be valid, or upholdable, kind of made everyone feel a bit more comfortable.
So when you hear about the situation of the building owner left in a walk-off and he came back, this was described to you by YHT, or how? Do you hear it from the people?
So there were a couple of meetings, but mostly because we were doing this project in partnership, and at this stage, obviously, Tobias Manson had literally, it was me, and I arrived, a couple of months earlier. So they were very much leading that kind of side of things, and also the side of the government. Albeit we were sort of pushing it along, and the main thing we were pushing on was to try and get it on site. So we arrived in November of 2014, and we got. It felt like a long time at the time, but actually, in hindsight, it wasn't too bad. We started work in July. So it's like 6. In terms of pushing it hard, it's probably about 7 months.
Okay.
Anything I'll take on it was, look, whether there's a valid claim here or not, we're just doing up the building around the existing tenants, and if firstly, that's only going to secure their position, because I think it's going to be harder for him to demolish a nicely done up building
that's
received a blue black building that's received a lot of government and YCDC attention and ultimately support. So I think we just felt like just getting the building refurbished meant that A, it was much less likely to be demolished, and B, that the community was much less likely to be displaced.
Right.
And we did other things there was quite a lot of potential risk with what we did around the kind of semi-formalising the external shops.
Yeah.
When we started, we were always a bit nervous around that, and that's why we were very conscious never to sort of take it all away for the duration of the works and then bring it back at the end. So a lot of that stuff we actually kept most of those units there during the works, and
had it been
did it all in the last few weeks.
Was it registered a DB before you all came? It was not. Okay.
No, I think they tried. There was clearly a paper trail that someone had tried to. They were sort of like saying about things, the back stairs dangerous, blah blah blah. And YCDC, interestingly, never did declare it. They said that they served it they served it like a repairs notice, effectively.
Okay.
Saying it needed repairs, but it never got the dangerous building.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those seem to have stopped in general throughout the city. They're not issuing those anymore, which is a positive step forward.
Yeah.
When you are looking for, when that project came up, or when you are looking for now new projects, with such a complicated issues around land tenure, around who potentially could be the owner, or different claims, how much of those claims factor into your decisions for choosing which buildings to renovate?
Yeah, I mean, hugely. I think in terms of, well, that feeds into the matrix of what's possible to do and how likely do you think we are to secure the building, and that comes from a number of different factors. Obviously, the ambiguity over ownership is a big one factor in that. But the truth is, I don't think you can take on any building downtown without some kind of claim, or so you've got to have a certain amount of stomach for it, and I think. And sometimes you just kind of need to plough on as well, as we did on the Merchant Street projects to a certain extent. Otherwise, there's always a reason not to do something, I think, probably. And I think, provided what you're doing isn't forcibly displacing anyone or making anyone's. I think if you're doing up a building and hopefully you're increasing public access and increasing public benefit, then it's very difficult to argue in whichever scenario that it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Even if 5 years down the line, the whole lay of the land changes and suddenly the government decides to start giving back buildings to, returning Indian families because they think that they were forcibly taken off them in the first place and they never should have been. I mean, it's unlikely to have happened, but even if that did happen, the fact that building goes across in 5 years and in those it's been done up, it's had public benefit, it's still a good thing.
So even if it's destroyed by the family, by the returnee, at least it had 5 years of...
Well, I think destroyed. I think it's much less likely to be destroyed if it's there and has a proven use. I think it's much easier to demolish a building that's really badly in poor condition and hasn't been used for many years, because you can say, oh well, it's not fit for purpose, it's unsafe, it's easier to say it's a dangerous building. But if it's actually sparkling and it's been done up well and people are using it and it's got benefit to the public, and it's much harder. Have you had any interaction with the person who made the claim? We never directly met them. It was always somewhat through White Street at the start.
Okay.
And then they never really. I mean, I think they had a claim on quite a few buildings, so I suspect they sort of go for the easier ones. And once it looked like this wasn't going to be that easier a claim, so we pursued other.
Yeah, it sounds like he owns a lot of stuff around downtown and Yeominji as well.
Yeah,
it's all around.
But we were expecting more interaction during the things, and actually the only interaction we did have is that clearly he had a relationship with one of the tenants, and they were a little bit difficult. It was actually one of the peripheral tenants about a sort of toilet on the back, and again, it sort of erupted a whole sort of dialogue, shall we say, within the community that this toilet should have never been in there, and technically it shouldn't have been, because it was built basically in the back passageway, which is technically YCDC, supposed to be a service passage, and they built a toilet in the back of it and all this kind of stuff. So,
outside toilet?
Yeah, so we kind of got stuck in the middle of that a little bit, but it transpired that clearly he was in dialogue with the landowner.
Okay.
And that's the only sort of interaction we had with the landowner, probably after the first kind of month of the work. Interesting.
Do you know if he still retains claim to the land?
I'm sure he does. I mean, and whether it's legally valid or not, I'm sure
Okay.
he has a claim. He thinks he has a claim on the land. I
Okay.
suspect.
And some of the tenants are still paying him rent.
Are they? Did you say? Or
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a nominal amount of money, and I suspect that because the other situation you've obviously got is that a lot of those tenants probably don't feel that secure in their own tenure.
Right.
So I
did
guess
this
by paying someone, they
Yeah.
feel like that's legitimizing.
Did this process and when they received their property back, was there some sort of legal step taken for them to receive new documentation that
No.
Nothing.
No.
Okay.
We didn't get involved in that side of things at all.
and no one YHG and YCDC
No.
didn't as well. So
No.
they're in the same
Yeah.
legal
Legally, they're
position
in the
as-
same legal position as before, but
Okay.
much less likely to.
right because there's someone that's selling the unit, right?
Yeah.
So is he going to still have to sell through the NALEMU, that agreed understanding without having the documents?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure.
All right.
Which again, I mean, I suppose coming back to your previous question, also, it's whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's also, I suspect, why no one's looking to sell as well.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
And that's why everyone's very interested in renting
Right.
for a higher value.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, it's a bit like rent control, I guess. It does keep people. It sort of, in some ways, protects against gentrification.
Yeah.
Albeit not for rental gentrification, but at least then they're sort of gaining the rental
Yeah, for
interest
sure.
from it. But no, the guy whose apartment you went to,
Yeah.
So originally when we went in there, so he's in dispute with the tea shop below because
Right.
they're still, I think they're distant relatives from their grandfather who split the unit solely between the children, and they both, I think, have a claim on each other's unit basically.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a family
Yeah.
split there, and that was actually the apartment that was in the worst condition. So we originally sort of said, we tried to negotiate with them that we could have use of that for kind of a community space, for a provision space, sort of a project for like,
Right.
I don't know, like a year after the project, and we'd do it up.
Yeah.
And it sort of came apparent, and there's clearly quite a web of people who's talking to, you meet with him and then he sort of have to go off and consult his
Yeah.
different stakeholders or whatever. So he was quite, not very open. And then it transpired that he wanted to rent it out, do it up to rent out to foreigners, and we were like, okay, that's great, fine, whatever. And we sort of offered him some advice on as foreigners, what foreigners might want to do.
Yeah.
And he completely, for some reason, I don't know why, completely ignored that and did some pretty terrible things, including completely tiling walls and ceiling of the back space.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still like that. Whereas actually that was a lovely space, as was the front space. He did, and he put in some, anyway.
The current tenant has done as good a job as you can do without changing any of the structural.
Yeah, which is
Change that.
really sad because it was an amazing show. I mean, do you see when we had the exhibition on the opposite side?
Yeah. Who's
and-
occupying that space at this point?
So the same owner, well, I think so, it's the same owner. It was last time we checked. So Udane is the older guy. He's the kind of the community leader. His son and daughter were living there
Okay.
before.
And they let you use it as a space temporarily.
Yeah, they let us have it for 3 months. Basically.
Oh, okay.
We had a very good relationship with them. But it just seemed quite nice to use the other space because it was in the worst condition. It was kind of the biggest transformation, and it hadn't been used. It had been sort of derelict for many years. So it just seemed.
So it was storage almost for the tea shop upstairs.
But yeah, it's really sad because obviously that did look like that other apartment, and then he sort of decided to fit it out and kept on going out there and trying to offer him advice or whatever, and he just, I don't know, just sort of had this clear vision of what people wanted.
Yeah. Did you set a list of guidelines for the exterior of the building of what can and can't be done?
Yeah, well, we sort of sat down and agreed a kind of management and maintenance plan for the building. Costed as well, sort of saying things like clean the gutters once a year after all the leaves fall on the tree, all these kind of things, simple stuff, the things you have to do on a sort of monthly, quarterly, and annually, sort of biannually, 5 years, 10 years kind of cycle. And we costed it a lot and sort of divided it by the number of things and just sort of showed that it wasn't a huge amount of money. And even sort of reline washing the building after 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Still,
and as for external, like, there's no satellite dishes on that.
No. We did. In fact, the one person we put the AC guy was that guy from Oxford.
Yeah.
And we called up because they stuck it on the outside, and we called up the not so friendly landlord and sort of said that wasn't really in line with what we'd agreed with all the tenants. We didn't have any enforcement, so it's really just a sort of a conversation. We were sort of saying, we all sat down, we read out this document, we agreed what couldn't be done, and there's an AC unit, and he turned around and said, yeah, it's just foreign tenant. He just put it on there. And I was just like, I mean, firstly, obviously, the landlord should be keeping control of that, really.
Yeah.
But it did seem quite ironic that it was. Because what they should have done is fixed it on the back wall like we did with all the other ones.
So there are other ACs in that building?
Yeah, they're all fixed. So we basically created a zone where you fix the AC units, which is on the back wall, which is into the service passage. So
right.
And we relocated all the ones that were on the front.
Are there satellite dishes as well? If there's a Love Hotel, I assume there's probably TV.
Yeah, there was one at the back. I mean, when we got there were huge, great old school things in the valley, which we just got rid of because they're all redundant. But yeah, no, a couple of people had them at the back as well.
Okay. So it wasn't that there was a list of things that can't be done; it was a list of things that were done in a particular. If you're going to do them, do them.
I mean, we had no ability to enforce anything, so it didn't really feel right to sort of say you must do this, you mustn't do that.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of saying, in the spirit of this kind of agreement, this is, and also try and make it easy to say, right, there's no reason why you shouldn't do this. You know?
Right.
If you put an AC unit on, fine, just stick it here rather than right on the front.
Yeah.
And I think some of the, actually to be fair, the Love Hotel guy, although he was quite difficult, he was the one who used the signs that we suggested. He used some other stuff. And I've later gone back and seen that he has fixed some AC units on the front bit, and I can sort of see why he's done it, because he's got lots of little units, probably quite difficult. But he has tried to conceal them, and so it's interesting. We've had different people sort of pick it up.
When this project continued, it seemed that others in the area started getting very excited at the idea that the Prince of Wales was about to come in and renovate their place as well. Was there any outreach done in the marketing side to explain that this is a model that can be repeated, but the financial replicability will not be done in the same way?
I think through our exhibition and stuff, we tried to communicate that this is a standalone charitable project. It's not a sustainable economic model for the renovation of these buildings, and really it was a model to deliver the training and think about and find for us, obviously, as an organisation, we learned a huge amount, but I think it wasn't just us that was learning a lot, it was also the kind of the construction community in Yangon, certainly YT as well. In terms of when I arrived and sort of said, right, who knows about Sawmill building? And it was like, well, there's not really any contractors who got that much experience in that. So, and that was true to a certain extent, but obviously there were people who had worked on all buildings, and there's also a lot of people around with kind of great carpentry skills. All the masons who worked on the pagodas who still knew how to use lime, all these things. So it wasn't. So just finding a lot of those people and doing all that is quite an important thing. And we attended some works the other day, just some basic enabled works, and we sent it out to some contractors that we actually asked to tender the Merchant Street project, and the quality of tender that we got back was 1,000 times better than the ones for Merchant Street. So that's partly people knowing what we expect and going for the extra effort, but also I think the levels are sort of coming up generally.
Do you keep a database of these groups that if someone else in that situation are you being contacted by other?
Yeah, it's quite often people ask us if there are people we recommend, and definitely. And then, so all the training workshops we did, we've got contact details for everyone who came to those. We then passed that over to the YHT, who've just done they finished a few months ago, but they had some funding from the Australian Embassy to deliver some more traditional building training workshops. So they used our list, built on that, and they've got a database. And actually, Coco, my site engineer, helped facilitate quite a lot of those workshops as well. So I guess it's all sort of feeding off each other.
In your experience, if this is not a I mean, philanthropic donation is not clearly a scalable model. What are some of the scalable models that would work in the Yangon context?
I mean, I think, well, so what we were hoping to do on the next project is a bigger project, which would be kind of more proving the economic viability.
Okay.
By trying to still deliver on a sort of social agenda, but also kind of raise, albeit below market returns, still sort of investment rather than kind of grant money and
through donation or through
no, through investment. I mean, through
how do you get a return on the investment if it's
so by basically, so the model would be you agree with the government that they've got too many buildings that they know what to do with, and they will give over to a locally held special purpose vehicle a long lease for a nominal amount of money, and then off the back of that you basically you raise money to renovate that building, but based on the kind of projected income stream through a mixture of commercial and social uses.
Okay, so you need to have commercial interests that are actually operating out of that building.
Yeah. But it can be like, I mean, it can be, so for instance, one of the models we've been looking at would be more of a kind of a cultural and tourism hub, which would be combine some of our work in craft. So you'd have craft workshops in there, but craft retail. So obviously both of those are revenue earning, rent paying.
Right.
You have some F&B, you can have some office space in that, but maybe office with more a broader kind of social agenda potentially, and also creating public recreational space within that building. So sort of mixing things together and creating sort of vibrant buildings that have public access but still create and generate some revenue. And improving public realm around those buildings as well.
Those models work when there's vacancies in the building, but if you were to redo it at the Merchant Street building where every unit was occupied.
No, it wouldn't work at that. No, these are vacant government buildings basically.
Okay.
That one works all. Yeah.
Are there ways to have a sustainable model when everyone is still occupying the property?
I mean, it depends really. I mean, I suppose if you're kind of going down the Doane kind of like model of trying to upgrade and then for increased incomes, then obviously that's one way of doing it. But that relies on
someone wanting to move out at some point as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess either it's someone who's living there and they want to leverage up their asset and they're happy to go and live somewhere and pay a cheaper rent and rent that thing out for more.
Yeah.
And generate income that way. Or it's everyone in the building clubbing together saying that they want to improve the quality of their building, either for their own benefit or because they want to rent it out to get greater financial benefit. I mean, there is no reason why, say, the Merchant Street tenants